Hey, what's up guys? Norchetto here. Thanks for stopping in. Today we're going over ATL Academy's 5th and final week of Contenders Season 3 and their match versus Fusion University. We started out on Busan with Mecha Base, ATL running a more traditional Goats look, and Fusion University coming in with a May variant. ATL came in strong and ended up getting a nice early pick on the enemy Rhine, and even though they had started to lose a couple of players themselves, it looked like they were going to end up winning the fight. Unfortunately, ATL players rotated to the point to cap while Gator was left to contend against a regrouping Fusion University, and after him and Ajax were picked off, Fusion was able to just continue to resecure their dominance in a fight that seemed lost and retake the point after very little time under Atlanta control. This early fight really gave a lot of foreshadowing about the performances of the day, as Atlanta made really good initial pushes and engagements, but unlike their previous opponents, Fusion University didn't break or scatter when given pressure or when losing teammates. They would tighten up and continue to play out the fight. Fusion ended up holding strong and stopping several Atlanta pushes before they could really get going. Alarms and Yada did a ton of work with early picks and fights, and the Blizz Grav combo helped secure others. ATL did actually have several decent pushes, but again, even the ones where they looked to come out ahead tended to end with Fusion players just tightening up and making some key plays to regain control. Gator even came out with some major environmental kills off the backside of the point to really position ATL in a place to retake the point, but the surviving Fusion players once again played out the fight and ended up with a strong pushback to hold Mecha Base and take the point. We then took a trip downtown for round 2, where ATL went with a traditional Goats comp and Fusion showed up with a Widow-Pharah DPS combo. The Pharah would end up being a major problem when uncontested, allowing Fusion to take the point and causing ATL to swap over to Saucy on the McCree. This worked, as with the extra pressure on the Pharah, Atlanta was able to push in and take the point back. Unfortunately, even with a great bomb from Hawk to stop a push by deleting their DPS, Fusion was able to come back and use high aggression and an offensive transcendence to push into the back line of ATL and dismantle the team, taking back the point. Atlanta was able to come back and try to retake, but Fusion was very good about pulling back and waiting for Atlanta. Again, this is something that we aren't used to seeing from our opponents. Generally in the past, when we've engaged, the enemy team has either tried to force an opening which has been punished, or they eventually get sloppy and ATL takes advantage of the situation by pouncing. In this situation, Fusion waited patiently, and when Atlanta tried to make an aggressive move, Fusion gave up a little more space to make the push a bit scattered, leading to a pick on Saucy, and then the whole push falling apart. Fusion University takes Busan, going up 1-0. Next we moved over to Nimbani, which ended up going a bit differently than our previous point B holds and hyper-aggression. Atlanta started on attack, where we started with a more traditional comp, but ended up having Saucy swap back over to the McCree in order to deal with the Pharah flying around. The pressure helps to allow them to push in, and even missing Sugarfree on the Brig due to a pick, they were able to take out Fusion's Winston and push to the point. What tipped the scales on this fight was a misplaced ult by Nice on the Pharah, who, when attempting to kill Dogman, ended up killing himself by blasting the sturdiest streetlight on the planet. Dogman is able to continue healing, even popping his Transcendence to help the team secure point A rather quickly. Atlanta got the payload rolling and frankly looked great as they carried the momentum from point A and were able to secure fights on the way to point B, thanks to some great play by Saucy, and then pushed it up most of the way to point C, finally being shut down just before the finish. And after a few pushes that were shut down by Fusion, Hawk and Gator were able to secure some kills, turn a fight, and push the payload the rest of the way with only a handful of seconds on the clock. Fusion took over on attack and were able to make quick work on point A, as Atlanta attempted to be aggressive, as we've seen before, but tried to jump on Fusion before they were able to get in position to make a push. Unfortunately, like other fights during the day, Fusion was able to tighten up, play smart, and prevent the early aggression from causing any ruckus, pushing back against it, securing kills, and making the point A take a little easier than the time Atlanta had. Atlanta did look good on defense, shutting down several of Fusion's attempts, but thanks to things like an EMP turning a seemingly lost fight and an indoor Grav bomb combo, ATL couldn't hold and allowed Fusion University to cap point B, followed by a strong push towards point C, ending with Fusion throwing out a Diva bomb that didn't secure any kills but split the team and allowed for us to be picked apart, allowing Fusion to cap point C with about a minute longer than Atlanta. Back to attack as Atlanta tries to take as much as they can as quickly as they can, and while Sugarfree is able to secure the first kill onto the enemy Winston, Saucy on the McCree falls soon afterwards, and this allows the Pharah to rain damage down mostly uncontested. Atlanta backs off and regroups for one final push, but it's rushed, and Fusion stays calm under pressure, exploiting the split group and cleaning up without Atlanta taking a tick on the second push. Fusion University, however, comes back strong, only needing a single tick. Atlanta was running dive goats, and Fusion was back on the Pharah Sombra combo that's been messing with us all day, and are able to get an early kill on a Hawk who is very far forward, taking him out and allowing the Pharah to once again rain damage down, building an ult and securing even more kills as Fusion is able to take a tick and Nubani. Fusion University is up 2-0. The show moves over to Hanamura, where ATL goes on attack first and opts to go with something out of the ordinary as they show Gator on Hammond with Saucy on Hanzo and Sugarfree on Pharah. This works out really well for them, as Sugar Free is able to do work and take out several members of Fusion with direct damage, boops, and ult usage. After the take, ATL swaps over to a Goats comp and moves to point B, where they almost get a tick on their first push, but thanks to Fusion's ability to stay alive and keep teamfights going, Atlanta struggled to gain any ground until the last possible push. Fusion University multiple times were down multiple people and should have lost fights, but ATL turned on the aggression and the Fusion players played around them in such a way that Atlanta was never really able to deal with the severe respawn advantage of point B until the last few seconds of the round, where they finally secure a more clean team kill leading to the eventual take. On defense, Atlanta attempted to hold point A with the Orisa Bastion combo we've seen them use, but Fusion was able to move quickly through the interior hallways to reduce damage, eventually rotating onto the point and around the back side, trying to force Bastion off of the deck. Atlanta does rotate around, but Fusion University is so good about playing tight sight lines and corners that Bastion isn't able to do much work. Atlanta does end up finally securing some kills and start to win the fight, but a late grab from Fusion turns the tides and allowed Fusion to take the point. But that's not all. Fusion takes the point and hightails it to point B, where Atlanta's working on getting set up on the walkway above the point with Symmetra, as we've seen. Fusion doesn't give them time to set up, however, and annihilates Atlanta before they can even mount a proper defense, taking point B with a huge 5+ minute time bank compared to Atlanta's 28 seconds. Atlanta went back to attack and, with minimal time left, was only able to get a single push. They did make it to point, but Dogman was picked off, and with minimal healing, they attempted to back out. Unfortunately, they were chased and punished, and thanks to the Mei wall, there wasn't a way to get back to even contest. Fusion came in on their attack phase with a Genji and a Sombra, and moved immediately to the point with those two, while the rest of the team stayed closer to the choke. Atlanta's attention was divided, and they had to move quickly to prevent the single tick. It did not work, regrettably, and Fusion was able to take a tick on point A without even needing to clean up Atlanta, serving ATL Academy their first loss of the season and taking the day 3-0. We weren't done, however, as the game moved over to Route 66. It was another great matchup, and while Atlanta's push was initially slowed dramatically by a Sombra, to the point where it was hard to really pull off a solid push at all, they ended up really finding a lot of consistency, and once they pushed through point A, they weren't easily stopped, rolling through to point B with some decisive fight wins, and then having one long aggressive push on point C to take the point, showing us that they were still in it and still have the ability to play out sustained fights. On to defense, where Fusion tried to run a 4 DPS comp like we've seen in a few Route 66 matches from other teams and regions, and Atlanta shut it down pretty hard, forcing Fusion's back onto the Goats, which they were very aggressive with, catching Atlanta a bit off guard and finally securing point A. They rolled through looking for a point B take, but were denied hard by Atlanta, who was late in the day finally looking more like the team we know with confidence and aggression. Regrettably, an overtime push with well-played ults took Atlanta down and allowed a push towards point C. And while Atlanta did look good, they were not able to stop an eventual point C take in overtime, leading to a second attack defense phase for both teams. With so little time left, Fusion opted for a Sombra to fill out the normal Goats comp instead of a D.Va, and this allowed for a huge EMP that stops the Atlanta push around the first corner of the map. Fusion took over on attack and went with a 4 DPS comp again, but it worked this time as they played back and waited for some key picks before moving in and taking the payload a bit further, winning Route 66 and taking the day 4-0. This one definitely hurt a lot, but mostly it seemed to hit our pride. We've already locked in a spot for the playoffs, so this loss only really changes where we fall in the bracket. The thing that really hurt the most, though, was Atlanta actually did show up with several clutch plays, strong holds, and aggression leading to momentum, like on Route 66 or Nimbani. Unfortunately, we've been so used to opponents that crack and break when they have too much pressure put on them, and Fusion University was not cracking or breaking. In the fights where we would normally hunt down stragglers and clean up, Fusion would buckle down, tighten up, and exploit Atlanta expecting an easy cleanup. In fights where we expect a team to split up due to aggression, Fusion would group back up and cause our aggression to split our own team up. And most importantly, Fusion knows how to counter our Goats. We faced a few teams that have tried, but our mechanics in the meta have been so good that it hasn't worked. Fusion was not scared to play those comps they knew would work against us if they were played well, like the Sombra and Pharah that we really struggled with. The good news is that Fusion University are the returning champs trying for a third consecutive Contenders win, and they just showed us what we lacked to beat them in the playoffs. We banked on our ability to play Goats, and they know how to deal with it. If we can tighten up our Goats play and be more flexible on anti-Goats comps and swaps, I don't see a repeat of this performance. Something else I wanted to add is that Elk did a review of this matchup and mentioned that Fusion didn't actually study tapes, they just knew how to counter a Goats team. And I don't honestly believe this, as it would be completely reckless to not when you're going up against a team that has performed better than you in your group. They countered us perfectly, they knew where we would set up for our comps and how to rotate around them, even the non-Goats comps. They're trying to tell us that we're not good and they weren't scared, but it doesn't add up, and I think they just showed us the defenses they had to our comps. Fusion has performed worse against other teams in the group than us, and even with the 4-0 from them, there were several maps that could have gone the other way based on a single fight being tightened up a bit. So we go into playoffs with only a single loss versus the reigning champs, and I don't think we're going to have a problem when we see them in the finals. Playoffs start January the 10th, where we go up against NRG at 11:45 Eastern. NRG is the San Francisco Shock Academy team, and while they definitely have found success this season, they've shown their weakness, succumbing to 2 different 0-4 losses during the season. It's going to be a great game. Come check it out on Thursday, and until then, I'll talk to you later.